Are we okay, Alan? And yeah, we're all good. Welcome to everyone to UX Edinburgh. It's great to be back here in Codebase. The last time we were here was July 22. Had to look that up. My memory's not that good. The session was, I don't know if anyone remembers it, Tom was talking about side hustles and the Edinburgh lockdown economy. I don't know if anyone remembers that. In fact, was anyone there? If I could have a show of hands. Yes? Yes? Awesome. Yeah, old timers. Anyone new here tonight? Yes. Oh, wow, lots. Excellent. Welcome everyone. Yeah, it's great to be back here. Thanks to, he's over there, he's out in the corridor there, but thanks to Odrin for sort of bringing us back into the fold in Codebase. It's great to be here. Big thanks also to Alan over there. Alan will be bringing UX Edinburgh to the world via the power of live stream, which is awesome. Back in last year, I couldn't make one of these events in person, so I watched it via the live stream. And I have to say, I was absolutely blown away by the kind of professionalism of the feed. So thanks very much, Alan. Thanks, obviously, to all of you as well for coming here. And to our speaker, Gintare, who will be talking to us tonight on a very important topic, which is privacy and user experience, and the relationship between privacy and user experience. Just before we hand over to you, Gintare, we normally have like a community announcement section. Now I don't have any community announcements tonight. I was trying to wrap my brains trying to think of any. But if anyone else has got anything that they would like to inform the group about, could be events that are coming up. Could be job opportunities, could be anything really that you think's useful for the or interesting to the group. And please come up here and announce it now, or just at your seats, just shout out if anyone's got anything. Sorry, I should have had something, so I'd go first and then not make people feel as bad. But please do shout out if you've got any, if you know of any events that are coming up. If there's any, as I say, any job opportunities or anything else. No. I'll ask again at the end. You can have a think about it. I'm going to hand you straight over to Gintare now. Yeah, over to you, Gintare. Thank you.
Let's see if I need this. I'm quite a quiet person, so it might help. But let me know if the feedback is weird. Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. It's quite special for me because UX Meetup about 2.5 years ago was just one of those communities that really pushed me over the line in transitioning into the UX at the time. And it just so happens that it's 2 years today that I'm in my first UX role. So for those who are new to this, you are in the right place. This is such an encouraging and cozy community to be part of. Thank you so much, Mike, for doing this and for all of those who are involved. So my name is Gintare Venslowskaite, for those who are curious how that is pronounced. Today, yes, I'm going to talk about privacy UX as a human, but also user experience. Just a little bit about me. So for 2 years exactly, my professional role and home has been user vision. Thank you for supporting colleagues there. But my previous professional life was largely academic. I was teaching such things as research methods, critical thinking skills, history of the Soviet Union, of all things. And I was doing social and political science research, dealing with such difficult topics as forced migration, collective memory, cultural trauma, and so on. And just my last gig, sort of side hustle at the time in academia, was on data brokerage industry. And it just coincided that at the time I was transitioning into UX, and I realized that there is this topic, privacy UX, where both of these things just collide naturally. So that's where my enthusiasm really began with this topic. So I am an enthusiast, and I want to emphasize I'm not an expert. There's so many of experts out there that I will recommend to follow, and if you're especially interested, then I can give names and things like that. But I'm just interested, I'm following, I'm borderline obsessed sometimes, and I just want to share all of the things that I know. So it might be perfectly possible that some of you know much more than I do, and we'll have a little bit of discussion around that. This is how my colleagues see me. Okay. So let's address that. Okay. One of my managers even suggested that they should come here with the tinfoil hats with the brand user vision on it. So thanks for that. But yeah, I appreciate the jokes, but I can promise you that I'm not, a maniac. I'm not conspiracy theories. And I will try to show that by examples, research and numbers and evidence, all of those things that we really like in UX research, right? Okay, so what I'm going to talk about. So first of all, why privacy matters. What are current concerns revolving around data privacy, how response to privacy concerns is evolving, what design and UX has to do with data privacy, some principles that are kind of forming and shaping as we go of privacy UX, how to practice privacy personally and professionally, and what's in the horizon for data privacy. And the last note is probably going to be addressed only if we have time. So I'll try to fit all of this in 1 hour, but there's a lot to cover, and I'm going to try to be as informative as possible and as engaging as possible. It can be quite dull, to be honest. Okay, so what is privacy and why should we care? So privacy basically is just someone's right to keep their personal matters and relationships private. It's kind of the right to be let alone, or a freedom from interference, intrusion. If we talk about informational privacy, which overlaps quite significantly with digital privacy at this point in history, it's right to have some control over how your personal information is collected and used, but also to have some control over who has access to it. That is your personal information, for example, and under what circumstances. Most importantly, we need to remember that privacy is a human right. It's enshrined in such documents as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the European Convention of Human Rights, as well as European Charter of Fundamental Rights. So many rights documents there. So what I want to do is just to really sense check what your relationship with privacy is. So if you could quickly scan this with your phones. If you don't want to do that, you can raise your hand or just shout out. So there's options there. But what this is going to give us is simple polling visual, basically. So we can have both the discussion as well as the visual there. Okay. Now let's see, where's my browser? Okay. Let me just double check something. There you go. Yeah, oh, okay, you're already here. Yeah, so very interesting. Yeah, we do often ask that question, don't we? And we don't often get answers, so I'm really glad to see that you're answering this way. Okay, have you ever refused or stopped using a website or an app due to the lack of privacy controls? Anyone who is not voting on the phone, please just raise your voice. Yes, no? Yes? Okay. There's one person who doesn't really know what that means. I'm happy to explain if you want to reveal yourself. No? Yeah? Yeah, it's just one of those things that we are not always sure. You know, we keep using things without realizing what's going on behind. But it's increasingly common that people actually are aware of those risks and they stop using service or app. Have you ever fully read a privacy policy of any website, app, service, products? Oh dear. Yeah, that's fair, but oh my goodness, we have 8 people who have, so that's impressive. I want to meet you and probably congratulate you. This is very impressive and respectable. Okay, but most of us don't, right? Okay, let's move on. Do you generally trust companies to use your personal data only for the purposes that you provided it for? Yeah, okay. Okay, fair enough, yeah. So again, just that dominating result is that, you know, we don't, and we're not really sure if we can do anything about it. Do you ever check or adjust your privacy settings on devices and apps? Look at that. That's brilliant. Okay, thank you. Have you ever requested a company to delete your data? Oh, wow. Okay. I'm in the right place. Okay. Yeah, that's good. That's good. And was that easy? Anyone who wants to share? No, not easy. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Do you use any privacy-oriented browsers, extensions, search engines, and any kind of tools? Yeah. Okay, we have enthusiasts as well. Okay. Okay, some cynics that don't believe your work, they work. Good, that's healthy. Good. Do you use one of those? It's like a little camera cover on the laptop. No? That's good. Oh, that sparked a conversation, all of this. That's brilliant. That's great. So the rumor has it that Mark Zuckerberg uses it. So I wonder why. Okay. Have you ever had a chat with people about your phone listening to you? Okay. That's expected, I must say. Okay, so that's going to wrap up our little exercise. Thank you so much for participating. So yes, I kind of understand how it can be confusing, it can be challenging, it can be frustrating when it comes to these kind of things. And when it comes to my own experience, when you think that you're doing it all, you're trying your best to just kind of control these things, this kind of thing happens. So just a little side story. About a year ago, I was having my lunch and watching one of my guilty pleasure all-time sitcom, Frasier. Don't judge me. And at the same time, as probably most of you do, I was scrolling through my phone. At the time, on my phone, I had a Facebook app, so I was just scrolling through that. And the episode of Frasier was about these 2 protagonists chasing some caviar sellers. And all of a sudden, I look at my phone, and this ad pops up with caviar deal. And of course, you don't know me, but I do not have caviar on top of my shopping list, nor at the bottom of my shopping list. So I connected the dots very quickly. Somehow, these 2 machines were talking. I don't know how, and I was like, how did this happen to me? Like, I'm doing it all. So then I just went through some of the Facebook settings, and then I went through my phone settings, and I found this, which is well, covered by this lovely plant. But nevertheless, when you go to your app settings, there is like on Apple machine anyway, there's a setting about Siri, and basically allowing an app. Oh, thank you, Alan. You didn't have to do that. Allowing an app to learn from Siri, and I guess she's kind of a audio. I don't know. See, I'm not that technical, but like something was going on. I'm like, I was pretty sure that this is probably my best guess. So yeah, that kind of turned the rest of my lunch into this manic, obsessive almost, just going through all of the apps and just switching those. I can tell that some of you had that experience before. Yeah, so if you don't live under a rock or try really hard to, stay off the grid, and I have met people like this, believe me, you are generating a lot of data, an average of 1.7 megabyte of data per second. And this results in so-called, just a second. Yeah, this results in so-called data trail that consists of all of the activity and interactions that you might have with your personal or professional devices, but also things that happen public. So you can think of your computers, your phones, the websites that you visit, the apps that you use, the online services, smartphone devices, home devices, wearables, parking spaces, loyalty cards, registration. I mean, I could go on and on and on. And interesting thing about the parking, I'm not really sure if that's universal, but in some cases with the private parking spaces, this is just one of those examples that when you enter the parking, it scans your license plate, and legally it's problematic because you're not really giving consent in any way, and you don't really know like what kind of information is going to be used in relation to that scan. So yeah, but that contributes to all of that pool of data that it's kind of is collected about you. So what happens with all of this data? Well, in the simplest terms, it gets harvested, tracked, scraped, mined, aggregated. And you may say that's okay. We get a lot of benefits from that. It includes efficiency, convenience, it includes discounts, maybe more accurate health information, science moves forward quicker. So that's agreeably so. However, we also need to accept that data trail is essentially making us data subjects. In the last decades, businesses, organizational, but also institutions, entities, maybe institutional entities, they learned that through this stuff, you can learn a lot about people and you can influence people. So it's kind of just a better opportunity to target populations for commercial, for competitive, for political advantage. And it makes it a valuable commodity. So it's kind of a bought and sold, probably to the highest bidder. And this kind of makes us a bit of a clueless subjects to this rather aggressive economy because we don't really know how that data is collected, how it is being shaped, how it's being sold. We don't really know whether we can delete it or, more importantly, whether it's accurate. So sometimes that can impact of what kind of services we get or what we don't get. And I'll talk about that a little bit later through the words of Carissa Veliz. But just an interesting fact before I do. Anyone of you know a company called Experian? Yeah? Anyone works for it? Thankfully. Okay, so allegedly so, they have at least 1,000 data points on everyone in this room. Okay? They probably know you better than you do, which is quite creepy. Anyway, so let's watch this little video. I think I have to do this for Alan.
In the data economy that funds much of the internet, everything you do gets translated into data and sold on to the highest bidder. Thousands of corporations and governments around the world know who you are, what you do, where you live. They know who your family is, who your friends are. They know what you eat, how much you weigh, how much you drink, how do you drive. They know who you sleep next to, whether you're having an affair. They know about your sexual practices, your political tendencies, your diseases. They know what you hope for, what you fear, what you desire, what tempts you, where you hurt. And all these incredibly sensitive data gets compiled and sold to almost anyone who wants to buy it. And it turns out there's a lot of people who want to buy it, and most of them don't have your best interest at heart. Privacy matters because the lack of it gives others power over you. The more other people know about you, the more they can influence your behavior, try to interfere with your life, predict what you're going to do next. You and I are not being treated as equal citizens. We are being treated on the basis of our data. It's undermining equality of opportunity, and it's undermining the trust and the fabric of society. Potentially hundreds of algorithms are making decisions about you right now, and you have no idea about it. You don't have access to that data, and you have no way to correct data that might be inaccurate about you. You might be denied a loan, a job, an apartment, all this on the basis of data that is inaccessible to you. It's unfair and it's dangerous. Privacy is first and foremost a collective endeavor and a political concern. Having so much data getting collected and stored indefinitely is a ticking bomb. It's just a matter of time before things go sour. Just like we knew for decades that a pandemic was coming, we know that a massive cyber attack is coming. It's just a matter of time before it's successful. One of the examples that shows just how dangerous personal data is and just how dangerous our system is comes from the Second World War. One of the first things that the Nazis did when they invaded a city was go to the registry, because that's where the data was held. And they needed to get to the data to find Jews. There's a study that compares the country in Europe that had the most data on its citizens, which was the Netherlands, against the country in Europe that had the least data on its citizens, which was France. In the Netherlands, the Nazis found and killed about 73% of the Jewish population. In France, 25%. The Dutch had made two mistakes. First, they collected a lot more data than was needed. And second, they didn't have an easy way to delete data in the event of an emergency. We are making both of those mistakes at a grand scale never seen before. Even though some positive steps have been taken and we have new legislation to deal with privacy, for instance in Europe, the GDPR, it's not enough. It's not enough because every day we see new privacy scandals, because too much personal data is being collected, and because most of the burden is shouldered by individuals. It shouldn't be up to us to say no all the time to data collection. The default matters, and the default should be no personal data collection. In order to protect justice and fairness and equality and democracy, we need to regulate tech. We need to make sure that the algorithms that are judging us have passed randomized control trials and are trustworthy. We need to make sure that we know what algorithms are judging us and on the basis of what data. For democracy to be strong, the bulk of the power needs to be with the people. And that means that the citizenry has to have control of personal data.
Oh, spooky, huh?
In the data economy.
Right, so yeah, I remember when I first watched this video, I was like, oh my God, she's amazing, first of all, so follow her. But no, she works a lot on this topic, and she makes excellent points. You probably know some of them. And I guess the key point from this particular video that I want you to take away with is that there are multiple ways that you can be, denied something based on what kind of a data is out there and how it's used. And it's particularly dangerous when it's targeting vulnerabilities. Now, she mentions a few examples. I'm going to give you a couple more. So one that happened in the UK was a recent study, I think maybe a couple of years ago, came out about gambling and social betting companies who are collecting data and then targeting those who are already very, very vulnerable around that. And it actually shows that, they already use a lot of millions and billions, on advertising, just targeting. But 5% of its profits come from people who already are problem gamblers, and they're particularly targeted through these tricks like emails, or just pop-up advertising. stuff like that, even when they're trying to refuse and block all of that traffic coming their way. Another example that you probably heard emerged after the overthrow of Roe versus Wade by the US Supreme Court, again, a couple of years ago. Of course, it was problematic in so many other ways, but it also revealed this massive problem for informational privacy. So privacy in the US, some of you might know, are fairly compartmentalized. They don't have a national law around it. What that makes possible is so-called people's information, people's data websites, basically where you can just go and buy data about people. The good chunk of nation police, religious organizations, and even private citizens can now go after people seeking abortions, and maybe the doctors who are willing to provide them with the service. And it has been found that some of the data brokers promote access to data sets around these populations. So pregnant people or those who are planning or expecting, some of them don't even know that they're going to be pregnant, basically. We have stories like that as well. What that means is that they can be attacked. And that is fairly common in the US. And provided that there is access to this data so easily, this makes already very vulnerable population even more vulnerable. You probably heard about Cambridge Analytica. I'm not going to mention that and all of these dangers there. But there was also a case in the UK. Does any one of you know what Emma's Diary is? No? So it's one of the most widely circulated website clubs for moms to be in the UK. And it has been penalized for supplying over 1 million records to data broker Experian, which included personal data not only of the users, but also their families, their addresses, how many kids they had. That data was bought by one of the political parties before last general elections, just again to target them for political gain. So it happens everywhere, but it's very rarely exposed because it's hard to find these things. Okay, so let's move on. The good thing is that things are changing a little bit. There are more laws, there's more research, there are more products and services around privacy. And it's hard to measure how successful those are. It's easier to measure it in money. So here you can see just selection of the companies that have been penalized already and for how much. Of course, we can see clear winners. Meta is always the leader in this. But we have some brands that you probably wouldn't expect to be at the front line of penalizers, such as BetterHelp. And that's still fairly controversial. But it's just one of those examples where a company is claiming to respect data and do not share with others, but they do. And mental health is just one of those things that we would want to feel confident that companies don't share data about. Another good news is that awareness is growing, and we can see that in the popular culture. So media is kind of incorporating messaging around data privacy more and more. You may have heard or even watched documentaries such as The Great Hack or Social Dilemma, or maybe you follow programs such as John Oliver, who had a coverage about that. Or maybe you're a fan of Parks and Recreation. Anyone who was? Yeah, so Ron Swanson. Yeah, I love him. And I probably don't have time to play one of my favorite videos, but those who have no idea what Parks and Recreation is, please start watching it, first of all. And those who do, yes, yeah, just Ron is the privacy advocate for sure, right? Last year, we saw a Black Mirror episode about this topic as well. Joan is Awful is basically about the terms and conditions and how unfriendly they are, and therefore leave us, in the dark, let's just say that. Okay, so shouldn't users know better? I'm going to open this to the floor for for your thoughts. I mean, shouldn't we know better? There's so many things around us that are telling us that this is not good. What do you think? Shouldn't we be more careful? Mm-hmm.
I had a recent experience lately where I was using incognito mode on the
Oh, yeah.
browser, and then one of my mates said that's totally pointless. So I was just hide your history from yourself. So that was a bit of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I even have a screenshot of it somewhere, like about how Google has been privacy washing around the incognito mode. So totally.
Can we not make money off our own data? If it's, you know, that if it isn't that important, then why are they spending billions on it? And if it is important, can I get money for the thousands of points I'm releasing right now? Like,
You can.
is this a sales pitch? Have I come to the right place? But yeah, that's why I think you should know, but it's not taught.
Yeah, there are possibilities. I'm not aware of options where you can actually get cash. I think the only options that exist at the moment are in Bitcoin. Okay, okay, sorry. It's more like a rhetorical question. Yeah, but the answer is yes, and I can talk about it a bit later. Anyone else? We have one woman at the front as well. Oh, okay.
Just for answer the last question, there are already companies doing that. In fact, there is a British company called Generate that you can profit from your own data. Answering that question as well, I think, yes, we need to know because knowledge is power. Even sometimes we cannot control. This is like the same thing than ethical consumerism. Sometimes we don't know where money go, or it's ethical business, they're exploiting workers or not. Mm-hmm. But it's good to know so we can control more and we can pressure politics and other influence.
Good. That's a good point. Thank you. And I think one more. Just here.
Thank you. I was thinking that, yes, we should know better, but there is a limit of how much we can know. And we all have a life, a busy work life. This economy, we have a lot of other important things to worry about, or more urgent things we see in front of our eye. And I feel like, just like other UX things, we always say that it's never users' fault. And there is actually already like companies coming up with very clear guidelines on how to write privacy information that's only 1 page long. That's everyone should be able to clearly understand what's the most important point. And I have read in the privacy information before, and the only one I've read was Monzo Bank's privacy information. They even add emojis in them, and it's really, really easy to read. So it's 100% possible. The companies choose not to.
Thank you so much. Yes, you hit a few important points there.
There are actually feasible defenses against a lot of this. I'm thinking there's a technology I think Apple had a hand in developing called differential privacy. So, for example, the Tories are in the process of selling all our health data to a very sinister American company called Palantir. And there's been experiments where, I know you know this, but I'm not sure everyone else does, where large tranches of NHS data have been released for research purposes with all the names and addresses stripped. And within literally minutes, researchers have been able to reassociate them with all the addresses. So it's actually inescapable to the degree that I even remember reading one article that when you walk into a shop, they have those things counting you. Well, some of those take a photograph. And apparently from taking a photograph of your shoes, they can infer sort of 75% of the data points. but so can a human being. You know, it's statistical inference.
Yeah.
But I think part of the problem is that there are far too few technologically educated politicians, and I don't know how we stop it. You know, we can do all of these technological things, but it's a game of cat and mouse, and we're always going to lose out.
It's true, yeah. It doesn't mean we shouldn't try. But thank you so much, yes. And I think I have...
Yeah, I just wanted about the power of lying, which I've used since before the internet. My cat used to get regular mail shots from the Royal National, you know, the bird protection people. Used to send letters to my cat all the time because I'd used his name in a previous form that I had to fill in. And I know it's not much, but whenever I get asked, you know, did you buy this? You know, I'm a 15-year-old boy, and of course I bought it. Just to sort of mess it up. I know it just makes me feel better, but I'm sure it has some power if we all did it, you know, like I get a lot of emails, and I have guinea pigs that get a lot of emails about their pension plans, which they're, yeah. So.
Yeah, we can learn from this. Yeah. Okay, anyone else? Okay. Yeah, one more.
Yeah, I feel like, I guess even if you say that users should know better, there are certain institutions that you're kind of forced to interact with. So Experian, Equifax, the credit agencies, they're a really good example of that. Like even if you know about them and know that they collect all this data, you kind of have no choice when it comes to interacting with them. You can not be on Facebook, you can not be on Instagram, you can't not interact with the credit agencies. That's kind of like not a thing you can opt out of.
Yeah, true. Okay. Okay, I'll move on, just conscious of time a little bit. So, yes, thank you so much. It's true. And I agree with all of these sentiments because, yes, it's really hard to know what you don't know. You know, it's only kind of picking up now, and now we're more aware of these things. But really, for the last decade or more even, we haven't been informed on this. So, the scandals, you know, of these data breaches and profiling abuses, you know, they kind of help. But data economy kind of prompts practices aimed at collecting more and more data, and privacy is often inadvertently just kind of becoming a victim of it. So our understanding of how data is, you know, harvested and mined and processed, it's just limited. We don't have enough time for this, right? We have to already spread our attention thin for everything else in our life. So like, how can we possibly read these complicated privacy policies and just make sense of all of the settings that we have to go for all of the apps that we use? It's basically impossible. And that's what Daniel Soloby is saying, you know, you cannot really put this on the shoulders of the person, of the user, because it's just too much. So the point of this presentation really is that design is part of the problem, and I think some of you already pointed to that. It's not a surprise. One of the means to maximize data collection and neutralize that questioning is just privacy and friendly design, be it in code, be it in interface, be it in the language that is used. You know, it's all very complex. It could be lack of visibility, maybe ambiguous choices, no choices at all, or maybe choices that are hidden. So if we're talking about UX designers and UX professionals who are working on that design, that becomes very problematic, very problematic, because there's a paradox almost, right? We as the UX field pride ourselves in human centrism, and that philosophy kind of leads our way in everyday work, hopefully. We commit to serve the user, to look at the user, to check their needs before we do something, basically provide optimal experience. And if you are committed, you acknowledge that that experience goes beyond the interaction with the product, right? How it impacts us beyond. So if UX designers, or those calling themselves UX designers, are involved in compromising privacy-related design, that's an issue, right? Balancing between user needs and business needs is absolutely difficult, I can acknowledge that for sure. And it can lead to well-meaning designers actually being part of the problem, you know. And we'll talk about that a bit more in this section. So what is privacy UX? First of all, do you ever take notes of the privacy problematic interfaces? I take that most of you do. We can already establish that. And I guess another question is, what do you think makes design privacy unfriendly? Above the maybe examples that you already mentioned. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, Mike.
I think it's just the one you gave at the beginning of this one. I just checked my phone quickly after you said about Siri. And I noticed that I didn't even know on my phone that I have a super long list of apps. I don't know how many. I keep scrolling, there's no end of it. And I've noticed that there is no such thing as you can just turn off, let Siri use your data on all apps. You have to open every app and turn off on every single app. Yeah. And this is very scary. I think it's like deliberately make it difficult and time-consuming to do, so you give up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And this is very scary. I think this is why my partner just bought a ergonomic chair. We never talked about the brand of the chair, what the chair is. All I know is that he bought a chair. And the day the chair was delivered, my Chinese shopping app showed up the exact model, brand, and color of the chair that he bought. Yeah. So this is all cross-app information sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. Scary. Thank you so much. Yeah, but you see, like, we kind of learn about these things one thing at a time, and it scares us. And the most important thing is just not to get overwhelmed, I guess, no matter how challenging it may be. So there is like no list of principles per se, but just based on the research that I've done around this topic over the last couple of years, I would probably could summarize it into a few. So privacy UX basically talks about the promotion of privacy by default and by design. It encourages practicing, so that bridging the data privacy protection regulations and their translation into something that is user-friendly. Be it interfaces, journeys, or content, as application of UX principles that we already talked about, and just a general acknowledgement that privacy is an important element of user experience, right? Let's look at the deceptive designs that are actually related to privacy. So you probably already know who Harry Brignall is and the whole topic of deceptive patterns, also known as dark patterns. So there is a list of things that actually applies to privacy. So some of them are on this list, and I'm just going to go through examples and also explaining of how that sometimes is relevant to privacy UX. So pre-selection probably wouldn't surprise you. It's just one of those things that defaults you to get into the things that maybe you don't want to share. Examples from my experience are Duolingo and Clue. So those of you who use Duolingo, open the app, you know, because it's pre-defaulted for you to share the speech, even anonymously. But as our friend here said, you know, you can probably link the two fairly quickly. And also Clue, which is a period tracking app. They were changing their interfaces last year, and probably some things fell through the crack because they are actually quite privacy advocating app, or they at least claim to be. But in this case, I opened it and it was suddenly by default, you know, allowing retargeting, targeting, and tracking and all kinds of things. And I don't know where that data goes, right? Forced action. So this is basically just kind of that transactional pressure to choose an option that is better for the provider, and sometimes in the bundled version. So in an example here, It's, I think, example from TikTok is when you're asked to confirm that you're over 18, you're also agreeing to sharing, not sharing, accepting personalized ads. So again, you don't really have option, you have to admit to it. Privacy Zuckering, name kind of going back to the Cambridge Analytica scandal. It's basically tricking users to sharing more personal information than intended. So photos, addresses, phone numbers, or in this cases, all your contacts, their data and your friends' data. And that's just one of those very problematic areas. Is like, it's not just your data, it's also your family's data, it's your friends' data, maybe your colleagues, and that's how it works. So problematic. Confirm shaming, again, a very, very popular trick to do it in marketing, and it's relevant to privacy, is that typically you're asked to share something like your contact, not contact details, so like, yeah, I guess email addresses, you know. By the way, email addresses, how many of you have fake email account? Oh dear. Yeah, so probably using that for stuff like this, right? But yeah, in this kind of example here, that you don't see, sorry, you're presented, you know, with a very flashy deal, but then for those who kind of not sure about that, you know, there's another little option there, and in this case, it's kind of intimidating you or just shaming you. So, you know, no, I hate saving money. I'm going to use the discount. So this is pretty much you just sharing your email and then being exposed to that tracking. Hard to cancel or opt out. Again, just kind of a typically easy to subscribe to something, but incredibly difficult to just opt out or just cancel. So my own personal example that happened last year. So Meta basically now claims that to have a legitimate interest in tracking users, but they're giving you a chance to opt out. Now, there's a catch. So the form is incredibly difficult to find. The user have to go through all of this text. It's really difficult to understand. It's mostly legal jargon. And you have to basically provide a case to prove that you can be allowed to be given permission basically to opt out. So you have to convince Meta that you deserve that. And when you go through all of that, you realize that you live in the UK and it doesn't apply anymore for you because, so yeah, so thanks Brexit. Yeah, so this is a funny one. Visual interference comes in all kinds of shapes and sizes, and I'm going to be using some of the cookie banners for all of this. I'm sure we love those. So if you do access your websites from the country where companies need to comply with the requirements to seek user consent, such as most, well, the EU countries, but also UK still, you probably have seen many cookie banners. And the thing about cookie banner, it was, you know, one of those solutions that was very positive legislative. It was willing to address the problem. But the thing is that it's just one of those cases where deceptive patterns and cookie banners are thinking about the user experiences, but not the human experience. Because, of course, you come in, you want to get that out of the way, right? As quick as possible, because it's a barrier, effectively. It's a pain point. It's often times we need to get there quicker, so we just want to click on something that can help us to get there quicker. But the problem is that the long term, it's a problem. It's harming you because you're submitting to that tracking. So in this visual interference deceptive pattern example, you can see that the opt-out is barely visible, while, you know, the accepting cookies is very out there, prominent, and colorful. Another one with some cookie banner examples is decisional interference. It's basically limited or absent cookies choices or alternatives that would be otherwise preferable by you. And you can see some examples here. So you can see some emojis with cookies. It makes it fun. Or it's kind of a, saying, oh, you're in control, but then you again see that prominence of defined by me, so just really encouraging a language. And the latest from X, did someone say cookies? So again, just kind of sparking that, probably positive association with something sweet. Hindering, oh, this is fun. So it's kind of a delaying or making things difficult. So again, just kind of a how to making choice more problematic for the user. I'll just play this very quickly. It doesn't need sound, but my favorite one is come from Lithuanian providers, where I'm from. It took me 12 minutes to try and untick all of the legitimate interest toggles, and I wasn't done. I just gave up, and I thought, okay, I'm not really interested in that article. I'm going to do something else. Already wasted that many minutes of my life. But yeah, these are the worst. And to be fair, they're getting better. Most of them are pretty good, and they're giving you choices. But also, hindering is common in the settings. So again, just example from Meta, because they just keep giving. Of course, there's barely one place where you can control everything. So sometimes there's settings in the app, but also in the phone. Now, in this particular example, can I actually play it? Yeah. You're kind of given an impression that, you can opt out of audience-based advertising. But then, similarly to what you mentioned before, you have to go into every brand, every company, and then disallow it. And I mean, the list is long, obviously. So again, it's just so time-consuming. There's no quick way to do it. And I wonder, don't we know of easier things to do? Just kind of a bulk disallow? Of course we do. It's very purposeful that this is designed this way. So another fun one, if you're a Facebook user, imagine that you discovered that there's a list of advertisers that share my activity outside of Facebook with Facebook, which again is just target advertise-driven thing. Now let's say I want to sever those ties. And let's see how that looks like. Oh. So again, just going through multiple steps to get there first. And then I get a lot of shiny pictures, which is okay, like their language is getting better around that. But then again, I have to go, oh, well, look, I cannot select all. So I don't know how sorting would help me, to be honest. But yeah, I have to just go through all of that manual, laborious ticking of these buttons, Maybe some people, would like some advertisers to actually target them. I'm not saying that this is wrong, but you should allow to select all. I'm sorry. So yeah. Okay. Yeah. So obviously, compliant does not mean that it's user or human friendly. Most of these examples are compliant, but it doesn't make them user-friendly. So just because a company complies doesn't mean that they're going to be committing to the user needs. Your data and privacy protection legally depends on where you are, so that's another thing. It's hard to really check if companies honor your choices sometimes, because some of it is in the code, most of it is in the code, and we don't know how the code works. I don't anyway. Some of you do, I'm sure. And for the companies, sometimes paying the penalty bill is much cheaper than all of the revenue that they get from that data, long term anyway. So as our friend Harry say, the business, is going to make the best choices for them. And if there are flaws in the laws, they will probably abuse them. Examples of better cookie banners. In case you're interested, but I'm sure you saw them yourself, so just kind of making it quicker to reject quickies is yeah, it's making it much quicker for user. Okay, so now let's talk about designers. Shouldn't designers know better then? We talked about the users, how about designers? How much responsibility lies on them?
Depends in my head, because you've got the business needs, you're working for private sector businesses and you're not working for a council or a government group. You're being paid to work for the business to design something. So you can have as much kind of ethics in it as you want. However, you're working for a business making the thing. None of it's kind of community or council or government owned. So it's whatever you signed your contract to. That's your bottleneck in my head.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Yeah. That's a fair point.
Just to counter with my friend here a bit, I worked in compliance and among other things that I did throughout my career. And I'm not a lawyer, but usually this lies with lawyers a lot. And the problem with that is even if you want to make it user-friendly, it's not up to the designer. You're told to talk to compliance or talk to legal, and you go back to them and they give you this text. And I had only once, luckily, to draw a compliance clause for a contract. Of course, I was supervised by a lawyer, so I ran through that person to have the final okay. But I was basically taking from other contracts and putting the pieces together. So yeah, it was fine. And as you said, it was compliant. This is for the contracts, so very specific, nothing to do with privacy with the general public. But you know, it prompts to ask a lot of questions about this topic. And the more you understand, the more all these things that you mentioned arise in your head. But the truth is that a lot of that is legal jargon. So how do you get the lawyers, the legal teams, the compliance team to make that user-friendly, to work with you to get that done, with product teams, technology, and so on? Because there's a lot of people involved to get that done. And you're usually given a link to put in a design and just to underline the thing that says private policy. So that's the hard part for me, how you link design and product and technology, well, legal and the other departments that are around the privacy issue.
Yeah, that's brilliant. You're basically doing this for me at this point, you know? Yeah, that's really right, yeah.
Yeah, I guess to the point of the first speaker, I feel like it's true that you're, like as a designer, you're accountable to the company and your boss, not to the board. Whereas, you know, the CEO is accountable to the board and is ultimately responsible for making money. I do feel like there's a balance there where as a UX professional, you're kind of the champion of the user and you should be taking that role. So if you know what's right for the user, you should be championing that. And you might be overruled by the company and legal in the end. But it's still like you should start in that position of like don't start with the position I'm going to do what I'm told, start in the position I'm going to try and champion what's best for the user.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
I attended a conference a few years ago before pandemic times, and one of the talks was about, and I can't remember if it was designers or just people in general in the tech world taking like a Hippocratic oath to protect the general public from it's sort of like an ethical, moral call that I don't want to say says that the general public has no idea what's going on, so protect them, but sort of that. So maybe like a kind of going off your point there, where maybe that is us, maybe?
Yeah, absolutely.
I was just thinking, it reminds me of the book called Stolen Focus, where the author Harry talked about, he was ex-engineer at Google, how powerless he was when he tried to tell other engineers not to design Google apps to steal people's time. And he ended up having to quit And this is, I think, similar, so even the best of us can't do anything about it. I feel like, but as professionals, we have a lot of knowledge, like yourself. We know so much about how terrible it is. I feel like it might be a better way to do it is education, telling people about it and encourage people to talk about it and actually eventually influence the politics. So I guess like so far as I know, like the EU is the only place where it's illegal to use dark pattern now.
India as well now.
So if we make it sound like it's really important to us, maybe we can make our politicians to do so for us.
Yeah, I love that. Completely agree, yeah. It all starts because it's little, you know, these water thing, like, just making that impact and hopefully hoping that it will grow. And just out of interest, of those of you who are designers, have you received any training around sort of ethical design or these kind of things? Yeah? Sort of, yeah. Okay. So you're all right. There are a lot of limitations. So there, first of all, is a lack of privacy-forward requirements and direction coming from the upper circles in the companies. There is the lack of voice that designers get to impact these decisions. So again, just kind of being powerless is quite common. There's lack of awareness of relative regulations. And that is because it's really hard to understand them. So you need a user-friendly legal documents, you know. So there's this massive gap between understanding and how one can be bridged with another. There's lack of education and training. It's not a requirement typically. You know, there's no oath really, not formal anyway. And there's lack of collaboration. So again, just echoing some of the points that you already mentioned with other privacy stakeholders, mostly engineers and legal teams. There's not that many guidelines. They're kind of coming about already. There's so-called civic tech communities that are trying to bring that forward and into the world. But yeah, it's not enough, I guess, and there's no standard. And again, already mentioned, but just the unfriendliness of legal documents that makes it all difficult for all of us, I guess. Oh no, something happened to some of my elements on the slide. Apologies. But here are some things to consider. I feel like I'm, you know, obviously just repeating myself at this point, but on the professional level, all we can do as designers, as UX professionals, is first of all just be aware of some of these basic things revolving around privacy regulations, understand our organization's policies as well, be curious about privacy-forward solutions and businesses, maybe guidelines, looking out for tips, following people who are promoting those, being a champion in your organization, trying your best, you know, as long as you don't have to quit or be fired, for sure. And of course, on a practical level, one of those C's was supposed to be choice. So just, again, trying to look out for user when you see that something is not right, looking out for control, do they have enough? And yeah, just kind of understanding the compliance through collaboration with others who probably are closer to that legal aspect. And caution. So I was reading this book called Deliberate Intervention, and the author was mentioning something called buddy system. So almost like just talking to your colleague about it first, and then trying to reach the higher level, and hopefully that will reach some higher, you know, decision makers around these kind of things. Doesn't always work, but you know what, trying. So between that raising awareness, raising alert about potentially problematic designs to others, but also trying to be the champion, sharing this kind of topic with others, you know, you can have an impact even if it's small. Oh, here we are, you know. Stupid animations, okay, yeah. Okay, So the person you watched the video of, Carissa Belize, she recently said that, you know, if we're not really trying, if we're not believing that this will make a difference, that makes us a little bit complacent. So we just have to do the right thing, just, or, you know, die trying at least, you know, hoping that it will help. And to be honest, the things are changing because some of the people are trying, you know, so it's kind of a pushing maybe slowly and against a massive mountain, but, you know, things are changing and policies are appearing and regulations are added and, you know, we have a meetup about it, so hopefully that's also good. Yeah, and Alexandra Schmidt, so the author of the book I just mentioned, actually says, you know, the designers are at the front line of this. So it's a huge responsibility, but if you care about this, you know, you can actually try and make a difference. So, do I stop or do I? 10 minutes, okay, oh my God.
If you want to, otherwise we can...
No, at this point I could just stop because I feel like we covered the most important aspects of it, but just probably very quickly, any knowledge about changes in the privacy landscape? Hopeful, doubtful? How many of you are hopeful? Oh no. The cynic in the room is hopeful, good. Most of you are doubtful then. Not sure. Okay. Okay, so good news. Developments in sight are that the consumer awareness is definitely growing. So ICO, Information Commission Officer in the UK, did a survey 2 years ago, and it showed that 90% of the respondents actually expressed concern about you know, how their personal data is used. And that is, you know, not used without permission often. KMPG in 2021 did similar research as well, and it revealed that 86% of the respondents reported growing concerns. 63% of the consumers worldwide think that companies aren't honest about it. So, you know, people know about this more and more. Emerging laws are always also there. So maybe steady change, but significant. We get 10% more of those every year. And that has been resulting in, well, 157 countries at least having some kind of privacy laws. And that is 50% more than 10 years ago. So the change is there from the regulatory perspective. And we need regulation. We need that. You know, businesses don't regulate themselves, just admit that, okay? So there's also developments in design-specific law. So I was mentioning earlier, but yeah, in India now, deceptive patterns are not allowed by law. Business awareness is also growing, so we see more pleas for privacy coming from organizations. Privacy is increasingly seen as the next element of ESG framework. So consumer trust is seen as tied to the privacy. And, you know, companies actually do see returns if they do forward privacy. Maybe a little bit small at the moment, but I'm sure it's significant. We get more standards. So ICO actually adopted privacy by design standard last year. We have such draft documents as opinions on cookie banners, good practice initiatives, such one in Germany. We have some heuristics that you can find as well. And ICO and Competition and Markets Authority are also joining their forces at the moment. They have a joint paper already available about harmful designs, and they had a workshop this year just trying to gather a designer community and talk about it and trying to establish some kind of standards. So organizations are working, institutions are working as well. We see demand for privacy professionals, mostly engineers, but there is the need for knowledge base for that. So if you're looking for your new career, consider this, you know. We have also growing communities of practice. So some of them here, not all of them, but maybe some of you know of these brands. They're really active in actually raising alarm, doing some thinking around what could be changed, but also informing the general public. Pair Patterns or Fighting Dark Patterns podcast is quite good in case you're looking for another podcast, if you're not sick of the ones that you already have. Probably most of you will recognize these brands as well, so just kind of a selection by choice. No one is paying me for that advertisement. But yeah, just thinking browsers and other sort of intercepts, blocking, tracking is a good idea probably. Yeah, and privacy technologies are also growing. So since 2017, we have 777% increase. So a lot of tech people are jumping on this wagon, realizing that there is audience for it, as you can see, and probably is going to be growing. Talking about what do we do personally, there are also ideas not only maybe how to monetize that data for ourselves, but also how to have control of it and ownership even. So instead of allowing other organizations just to take it and then use it back against us, there is this idea that we can actually collect all of that data for ourselves and then create apps based on what we need as people. So imagine, I think the example that I heard is like, well, I would like to be reminded how many toilet paper I need to buy next month, so I can, based on my buying habits and all of that data, I can actually train an app on a server that I have with all of my data to do that for me. So silly example, but sounds incredibly difficult to imagine how that would work, to be honest. But that product is already there, and I'm sure it's not the only one. I don't want to finish on the, on the next. It's still an uphill battle. So yeah, so we do have surveillance still going on. There's a lot of privacy washing as well that companies resort to, unfortunately. Incognito mode with Google is probably the latest example. Limited control and scrutiny. So yeah, although we have regulations, it's sometimes quite difficult just to catch them all because the resource balance is so huge. So yes, I guess we need to do more just kind of prevent that a bit. And there is appeasement, like industry appeasement, because often, especially now with the AI, it's like we need the data, we need to train this thing on, it's like that's a nightmare for privacy. You probably can agree. So it's a problem because it's kind of seen as technology development versus privacy. It's either or. It's not either or. We can do it all. Some maneuvering from big tech. So have you heard about consent and pay? For Meta? So now you can actually pay if you want that Facebook, wouldn't not track you, but advertise you. That didn't make any sense. Just a second. Basically, you can pay to not be targeted. Yeah, which is now at the court, so I don't know how is this all going to pan out. It's very unsavory, to be honest. But yeah, regulation versus innovation is probably an interesting one. I would like to hear your thoughts. But yeah, again, just from Carissa, Belize, we cannot really be complacent. It's either or. It's not either or, and we can make tech work for privacy, in a way. So just how it all came from tech, it can all come back from, to tech to solve some of these issues. I think that's everything, but that's final thoughts. I will just jump through that. Any final thoughts from you?
very much. That was a very thorough tour of the landscape of privacy.
I'll just leave that there for you.
Wow. Okay. I was going to say it was nice to end on a positive note, and we kind of ended on a positive note, which is good.
It's hard.
It's great to hear that in a for a subject that is kind of not really known, I guess, for its good news stories. So good to have that in there as well. I'm told it's a kind of hard stop at 8, so we've maybe got about 10 minutes if anyone's got any kind of burning questions or thoughts. Otherwise, yeah, go on. Let me just get the mic over to you.
Just wondering what your thoughts can tell me about AI, the big thing of the past year. I heard an interesting podcast just the other day about police service in the US where clever AI could try and match, photos with what they thought, was the criminal, and surprise, surprise, they arrested the wrong guy and turned his life upside down, et cetera, thanks to the clever AI. So that must have an angle on all this.
Yeah, absolutely. This is so problematic. It's a nightmare for privacy. Probably the main problem is that all of that data is now being used for training. It feels like the train has left the station. It's really hard to now stop it. The good news that some of the regulators are jumping on it, so we can see examples from the EU, and we can see things in the US as well. And Clearview AI is one of those examples where that actually is being targeted with lawsuits for that reason, because you can see the long-term societal harms already. So yes, probably our data will feed some of these LLMs, especially, and have been. But, well, the EU has already introduced the AI regulation. I don't think it's a law yet, but yeah. And I'm sure the US will sort something of similar kind as well as under other countries. I guess the cynic in me just thinks, countries like China have already been doing surveillance, but they're at least open about it. With countries like the UK, the US, and it's also going on, but we just don't know, So I think maybe AI will bring awareness back to that a little bit. It's mostly about, that surveillance capitalism. I'm not sure if I answered your question, Chris, but it's just whole subsection around AI and privacy, to be honest, that is very complicated, and it's complicating things terribly for us. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, wherever I cut the cue. So I work in digital health innovation, and I can't express to you how much NHS Scotland does not speak to each other. Every board is doing their own thing, and so it made me think, well, you were saying that we want to make our data work for us. I don't think there's a person in Scotland that wouldn't want, if they got transferred to a specific hospital in Scotland, to have the same data in their home, I wish I was kidding. But if you were to say have surgery in Glasgow, most likely your Lothian notes aren't making it. So it's one of those things where I'm thinking, well, I'm really into hearing how industry and private sector is doing all these fantastic ways to just talk to each other when we can't even get our data for our healthcare sorted. So it kind of made me think, well, if information governance is what we call it, if information governance is holding us back, the innovation note you made about how it's curbing innovation, it is, that's what they're saying. How can we curb innovation for industry then? Should we be, instead of me looking at how does industry steal people's information, how can we start making that work for the people of Scotland? Well, maybe we should be taking an information governance roadblock. Somehow put it back and control, because don't you guys worry. The Scottish government doesn't want your data. They don't know what to do with it. So they don't want to share it. They don't want to do anything with it. And so that makes me think, well, they're already in that position. So why aren't they thinking, let's curb Meta? Like, anyways, so that's just a thought, and that's just me rambling. Who's next?
I just have a question for user vision, because my organization basically does work with user vision. So I was just thinking, like, in your role or in your company, is there anything being done for making things more private? Or maybe even in the organizations you work for, is there anything that you do to bring awareness or like just raise it in your reports or anything?
Yeah, so this is a good point. I think when I started talking about this topic, I just joined User Vision. And well, Chris, our CEO, who's in the room today, he was so enthusiastic about this. He was like, okay, definitely, let's talk about this and just try to spread the word. So we published the article, and then we started talking about how, to what extent can we talk about this with clients, for example, if we see that something is problematic. So we're having those conversations internally. We, of course, have to comply ourselves with all kinds of data, rules. So we do that. As far as the design is concerned, we don't design. So we are just researching, really, or doing accessibility stuff as well. So that's not really relevant for us. But we do see the opportunity of just trying to make an impact and difference. It's still kind of in the shaping mode, to be honest, because just gathering that intelligence of what are the standards, to what extent can we say to our clients, you need to do better, because there's no regulation. So, for example, with accessibility, when it became a law, well, now it's definitely a law, right? It became this year. Things changed, especially for public sector, right? You have to do it. If we had that behind us, for privacy, it would make all of the difference. At this point, it's a bit of a dancing, just sense checking how receptive people are. I don't know, Chris, if you want to add anything.
I think that's about it. I'd say encourage them and try and appeal to the client's better nature to be doing the right thing, because they'll, in a way similar to accessibility, they'll nod and say, oh yes, it's definitely the right thing to do. But there's many forces at play, and there is our sponsor, whoever, and client is not always going to be the winning one. So yeah, it's not a simple matter, but always looking to, and I'm so glad that we have such a knowledgeable resource to try and, at the very least, inform clients, because they're very often data privacy curious, let's say. They sometimes guiltily know that we probably could do a bit better, and we can help in that way.
Right, I'm afraid our time is up. But any further questions, hopefully, can be taken down the pub. So we're going to go to the Blue Blazer. Hopefully you'll join us, but you don't feel any pressure.
No, it's okay. I would like a drink. Thank you.
Good, excellent. So yeah, Blue Blazer, just out of here, turn left, and it's on the corner. And yeah, we've got about between 5 and 10 minutes to
back up, basically.
To get out, basically. So yeah, thanks very much for coming.
Thank you so much. You were wonderful.